Welcome to the Nourish Child Podcast, a show about childhood nutrition, feeding kids, and dealing with the ups and downs of growing a healthy child. Here's your host, registered dietitian and childhood nutrition expert, Jill Castle.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Nourish Child Podcast. Jill here, and today I have a friend and colleague, David Grotto. He is an author, but he's also been around the block a few times when it comes to nutrition and marketing. So he is here today to talk about nutrition marketing, food marketing to children, building healthy eating habits, and talking about his brand new book called The Girls Who Lived in the Refrigerator. It's a children's book and just came out. And so we are going to talk about that book and his plans for more books, more children's books. He's now a grandfather, so I totally understand the incentive here. But Dave is a creative guy. He sometimes calls himself the Guyetician. He's authored 3 other books, some of which you might have on your bookshelf. 101 Foods That Could Save Your Life, 101 Optimal Life Foods, and The Best Things You Can Eat. The Girls Who Lived in the Refrigerator is based on a story he used to tell his little girls, and it's his first children's book. So I wanted to support him and also pick his brain around food marketing to children and how we can get creative with building healthy eating habits in kids. So here's Dave. Dave Grotto, welcome to the Nourish Child Podcast. It is lovely to have you here.
Well, the honor and pleasure is all mine, Jill. I have to tell the audience, I'm geeking out right now because the quintessential pediatric dietitian is interviewing me. I feel it should be the other way around, but an honor and a pleasure to be here today.
Oh, well, I'm excited to talk about nutrition marketing to kids and your brand new book, The Girls Who Lived in the Refrigerator.
Yes.
So before we begin, can you tell my listeners who happen to be parents and professionals sort of your career history and what you do and how you actually came to writing a children's book?
Absolutely. I'd be happy to do that. I know the show is not multiple hours long, so I'm going to try to take a 40-year plus career and consolidate it in there. So long story short, my name's Dave Grotto. I'm a registered dietitian like Jill. And for full disclosure, I don't specialize in pediatric dietetics. I would refer to myself as kind of a nutrition generalist who has had an opportunity to specialize in certain areas such as oncology, cardiovascular disease, and then just family nutrition. Mm-hmm. So I used to have a practice called Nutrition House Call, where I would literally go into people's homes and I would go through their shelves, and I used to have kind of these stoplight stickers. Red was a boo-boo face, like those foods should be given to the neighbor you don't like. A yellow sticker would be, these aren't the best for you, but, okay to eat on occasion. Then green would be the smiley face, perfect, spot on. So a wake-up call for me, Jill, was like getting into people's homes and making it mandatory that everybody participate in that nutrition consultation, not just the person who's there to see. Because what I often would find is, as we know, 24-hour recalls and food frequency questionnaires are not always the most reliable. But I'll tell you who is reliable is little Susie and Johnny, who pull out a bag of candy and say, "Dad, don't forget to add this to your food frequency."
The truth tellers, children.
Truth tellers. And so, which is really revealing. And that's why I'm really a big supporter of family meals, eating together, because parents, often don't realize how much they model for their kids. And if you really expect them to eat a healthy meal pattern, you got to be a willing partner and all that. So anyhow, long story short, I would go back on a 6-month checkup. And the epiphany for me is I would often see these red sticker foods that I told them to get out of the house were winding up back in their house. And it was like a head scratcher for me. Then I finally asked, I said, I obviously told you that these foods are not going to be great for you. Why are they back in your house? They go, Dave, I like these foods. They're part of my food vernacular. So I learned back then, Jill, that I think dietitians, as we always talk about as being food and nutrition professionals, got to focus a little bit more on the food aspect. It got about behavior modification because it's not so easy to say, hey, give these up because they're not nutritious. That's not enough of a motivator for people.
True.
And in full disclosure, too, so in my background, I work at a company called Kellanova, formerly known as Kellogg. And there's a lot of research, showing about what consumers value most. And for the 10 plus years I've been here, it still ranks taste and enjoyment above allergies, sustainability, high sugar, sodium, whether the nutrients are right in proportion, you name it. It continues to be that way. So I think it's because we are creatures that like to eat for enjoyment, not just for sustenance. I think to my dietitian colleagues, and who I'm sure are watching, it's important to make sure that you come at this with a wide angle lens. And that's why I think I'm such a big fan of you, Jill, because I know you take in all those family dynamics, which is important.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a really important point. You can have all the knowledge in the world, but that may not motivate, your health behaviors, your food choices, or anything like that.
Right.
So knowledge does not mean, is not a straight line to positive outcomes necessarily.
Yeah.
And then you wrote this book,
Yes.
The Girls Who Lived in the Refrigerator.
Yeah.
And who were those girls?
Well, I'm going to reveal it all. I'm going to give you the dirt on the girls that live in the refrigerator. So, as I mentioned, I'm a registered dietitian. I'm married to a wife who is a registered nurse. And somehow, Jill, we are blessed with 3 daughters. But when they were young, they did not care much for fruits and vegetables. And I said to my wife, this is genetically impossible, right? I'm a dietitian, you're a nurse. They should be hardwired for loving fruits and vegetables. And so I pride myself on being a good storyteller. And my wife says, you always read a book to the kids before they go to bed. Why don't you make up a story this time about the nutrition value of fruits and vegetables? And I'm like, snooze fest. These kids are going to say, get the heck out of here, Dad. They're not going to be interested in that. And I know my girls, right? And so what I decided to do is I'm going to say, well, I got to take a different angle. And I saw on their side table to the bed that they had a fairy book. And I said, oh, okay. And I said to the girls, I want to talk to you today about 3 magical food fairies that lived in a refrigerator. And they're like, oh, right. So I caught their attention right off the bat. And I said, yeah, and their names were Chloe, Katie, and Madison, which happens to be my 3 daughters' name.
Yeah.
That helped a lot.
Yeah.
And then I said, yeah. And Chloe lived in the vegetable bin. And she used to knit little dresses out of green peppers, so kind of really developing the character. And the kids were like, like this, they were glued in. And then I said, Katie lived in the dairy bin, and she would ride around on a wheel of cheese and wash her hair with vanilla yogurt. And they were like, what? And then my last one, ironically, interestingly too, is Madison, my youngest daughter, who happens to be a registered dietitian like dear old dad. She's my mini me.
Yeah.
She lived in the fruit bin, and she would make fruit smoothies, and she would take the tops of strawberries, which are called the calyx, and make hats for her baby dolls. So these girls were locked in, Jill.
Yeah.
And then I said, these 3 girls never met each other until one fateful night where they were lying in bed saying, I wonder if there's another world out there. So they climb to the top of the world, they peek out, they see each other, and they were like, oh my God, let's bring back foods from our worlds and try it. Except Madison was a little reluctant. She was the one that was a little shy. She was the younger of the 3 and said, I've never tried new foods before. And then they reminded her about how brave she was climbing to the top of the world. So she said, okay, I'm going to be brave like you guys, try this. And the concoction they put together was salad. And she absolutely loved it. So the story is about bravery, it's about adventure, and nowhere in the book will you see the nutrition word anywhere. And that was done purposely because
Yeah.
I realized, as I just mentioned to you before, nutrition isn't always a motivator for kids, but fun, adventure, bravery seem to really make a difference. So my N=3 focus group
Yes.
made exponential increases in fruit and vegetable consumption after that.
That's
So,
amazing.
long story short, 20 years in the making, my parents, my daughters, my wife, friends, colleagues said, you've got to get this out there because it's not only a perfect companion for registered dietitians as they're sharing their nutrition messages, but it's a perfect thing for parents,
Mhm.
grandparents who have finicky eaters in their life because
For
this might
sure.
be just enough. So interestingly, I know we're going to be talking about marketing to kids, and this is a nice segue to that. There's
Mhm.
a lot of research that shows that cartoon characters absolutely can make an influence on children's purchase habits,
Mhm.
eating decisions, influencing mom's purchase habits, basket size, the whole 9 yards.
Mhm.
But those same cartoon characters could also be used to promote underconsumed food groups. And we've seen this, and whether it's, puppets or whatever. If you remember, Michelle Obama did a partnership for a better America, I think, or healthier
Mhm.
America,
Mhm.
and had a show that was out there. And, so there's a lot of attempts that have been made with this, but there really hasn't been a full blown program of saying, let's take these beloved characters, let's go ahead and use them and
Yeah.
incentivize kids to go ahead and make better habits.
Yeah. Yeah. So it is interesting because, when I was talking with somebody at the booth that I was at Fancy, and this fella was a parent of a 4-year-old. And he was talking about all the YouTube videos his child watched, and he watches with him. But he was commenting on the abundance of ads to kids, most of which centered around food and not the healthiest of foods.
Right.
Right. And so for the audience out there, for the parents out there who are listening, where are kids seeing these food advertisements, this food marketing, and also where are they seeing these ads, and what types of foods are we generally seeing advertised to
Yeah,
kids?
absolutely. Well, I am I would say more of an expert in the K-12 arena because that's
Mm-hmm.
one of the hats that I wear in the work that I do at Kellanova. And there's
Mm-hmm.
very strict marketing to kid guidelines on that, which, in my opinion, should be what's applied overall for all foods, right? Foods that meet certain nutrition criteria would really be the ideal foods to be marketed to kids, right? So, there are legalities around that, but there's also some standards. CFBAI, which is an organization that kind of oversees marketing to kids, is really kind of, self-policing industry to making sure. And many companies have signed up on this, including our organization as well. So, for example, in K-12, there's something called smart snacks criteria. And so any of the snacks that they sell outside of what's called a reimbursable meal must meet certain criteria. For example, smart snacks have to be less than 200 calories per serving, less than 200 milligrams of sodium, less than 35% of your calories from weight for sugar. So very, strict guidelines for that.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're going to do any advertisements of foods, they have to make sure that they meet those smart snacks guidelines. Also, you are not allowed to advertise any sort of cartoon characters, brands in school. So it's pretty strict guidelines there.
Mm-hmm.
But, so the interesting thing is kids get brand awareness in schools, and then they want to make sure, that they are applying those same brand requirements out in the retail marketplace as well too. So that I think is an important thing to learn about marketing to kids, is that we still have a little ways to go because
Yeah.
sometimes that the food doesn't always match what's in schools as well as what's in retail. And I'm going to be honest with you. This has been a bit of an eye opener for me for the past 10 years of working in the food industry, is that you can put out a healthy food. And it doesn't necessarily mean that that's what resonates with kids or even moms, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
so in K through 12, they're a captive audience. That's what they get to eat if they want to be part of that reimbursable meal program that they're offering. So those folks that are getting free and reduced meals, universal meals, have to meet those standards, and that's what's being served. So in retail, obviously, or even if you go off to a convenience store, it's a bit of the wild, wild west. You can get a variety of different foods. So
Mm-hmm.
that's why I think, it'd be great to have a universal set of guidelines for, hey, if you're going to serve meals in restaurants, National Restaurants Association has a wonderful program also that kids eat well. So making those meals more available,
Yeah.
incentivizing kids and parents to choose healthier choices, I think would be a good way to go as well.
Yeah. So the marketing sort of watchdogs, if you will, children's marketing watchdogs, companies are they voluntarily following those guidelines or are they mandated to follow those guidelines?
Well, the CFBAI is you sign up and you're voluntarily watching those, right? But there are very strict guidelines within schools, so
Yeah.
again, proud to say that we follow those guidelines as
Yeah.
well, too. Um, and then again, that's obviously age gated for younger kids. When they're in high school, those requirements are really not there. But that's why when I wrote my book, which I know we're going to talk about in a minute, that was age gated to 2 to 8 because I really wanted to develop those eating habits in those formative years. So
Right.
kids, try to not avoid foods because I think, that's truth be told, I think we've not been successful with kind of a stoplight system, if you will. I mean, there's a
Yeah.
lot of research going on globally about front of pack systems, and I'm sure you've done many a session in your podcast about that. But it's got to be also a focus on what are the positives, not just the negatives in there as well. And, sometimes people want to eat something that's sweet.
Sure.
Sometimes people want to have a snack. But, and again, not to be all over the place. And Jill, I don't know if you saw the last dietary guidelines committee session that they had, number 6 meeting of the science committee. But now there's talk about eliminating discretionary calories. Well, what are you going to do about if you want that occasional snack? How are you going to account for that? If you're
Yeah.
saying that there's no room for discretionary calories, then what's your message to consumers? So I think that's the difference between science experts and registered dietitians that have to make this come to life in the family home and
Yeah.
teaching people and meeting them where they live about how do you eat these foods that are a little bit more indulgent, but in smaller portions,
Yeah.
focusing on what should be most in the diet.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think when I think about, where food marketing is showing up for kids, obviously YouTube, obviously gaming devices or game oriented programs, uh, television, right? Kids programming, television. And my husband's in advertising too. And he doesn't, thank goodness, do any food advertising. He does advertising with cars, but there is this idea of hook 'em early and build that brand awareness so that over the course of a lifetime, they become um, devoted customers, right?
Mhm.
And I mean, I'll share an example like Pepperidge Farm white bread. My husband is a devoted, like had that from childhood on, and he is a devoted consumer of that, right? Thomas English muffins. And we are not endorsing any brands by saying these, by pointing these out. I'm just giving examples
Sure.
here, but lifelong consumer, brand devotee. And so if we're building awareness around food marketing to children, I think it's important that parents understand that, the idea is to saturate the market, right? And catch kids early so that they are devoted, loyal brand consumers over time.
Yeah.
Now, when you look at what are we marketing fruits and vegetables and dairy products and whole grains? No, we're marketing those lower, oftentimes we're marketing, the chips, the sweets, the discretionary calories. And so that makes it very hard for parents, I think, to battle. And this is why I really wanted to bring you on the show with this book, because I think that good books that, especially at a young age, that parents are reading to their children can counteract, some of maybe the other messaging or marketing that they're getting exposed to. Do you agree with that?
I would agree, and I'm hopeful, Jill. I think as you are, is that even some of these beloved brands, right? As you were just talking about, there's no doubt about it. The brand affinity is often developed in K through 12, for example. But I think if we take a lesson from the book of how school food service operators are working with brands and pairing them up with underconsumed food groups to make them more fun and enticing, I think that's the thing. And I'm trying to work more with commodities about that as well too.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You just don't put out a plate of Brussels sprouts and say, "Hey, kids, man, these are fantastic." But maybe you could do something fun
Mm-hmm.
with, crumbling up a favorite cracker as a topping as you're baking it off. Variety of different ways, right? And I think that's going to be the way to get to kids, because we can't forget about what's innate in our DNA and our hardwiring. And we are pleasure creatures.
Yeah.
We just don't want to eat for sustenance. And I think many of us, in policy, lose track of that and lose sight of that. And I think we've got to make that being front and center if we want kids to have those lifelong eating habits. It should come naturally. And I truthfully, Jill, I want kids not only to eat these foods, I want kids to crave these foods. I want them to go, "Oh my God, here comes a tomato on my plate. I'm so thrilled." And
Yeah.
whatever way you serve it, parents should feel really good about that, because you're going to start building those habits, and they'll be lifelong. My 3 daughters right now, I'm blessed, are great eaters. And I think it's because we were able to figure out, all right, well, we've got cartoon characters, plus we're going to take that and put it into like a cookbook, if you will, and start making really kid-friendly recipes.
Yeah. Yeah. I have 4 great eaters too. They were exposed early on to tomatoes and cucumbers and lemons and limes and, mustard and, broccoli and Brussels. And I never ascribed to the, "Oh, what do you like? Oh, I'll go make that for you." That to me, that's not my job. My job is, we don't know what you like, so let's go figure out what you like.
Exactly.
Right? And
Exactly.
and have the adventure to it.
Right.
So when you think, Dave, of building healthy eating habits as, a non-pediatric dietitian, as a dad, as somebody who works in, the brand industry, the food brand industry, what do you think are the cornerstones of building healthy eating habits in kids?
Yeah, I think, and I know you, I don't want to paraphrase every single thing that's in your wonderful new book, but I think one of the things that you talk about is making sure that you're instilling patience in new parents. Kids will go through certain periods of time where they're just averse to eating certain foods. There's lots of literature, as you know, out there that sometimes you have to reintroduce different food or same foods in different ways multiple times before it becomes part of kids' vernacular. So I would encourage parents, especially out there, and even new dietitians that are coaching parents, to stay the course, to try different foods. Get kids involved when they're old enough to maybe helping to prepare foods, just putting plates out on the table. Any of those behaviors that are part of the family meal is really, really critical. And I think that's an important thing. Focus in on, like, what do you see that is a favorite food? Like, I had someone who came up to me, and I'm probably pronouncing it wrong. It's that Hispanic cracker that's like in a tube. Is it sake? Takis? Taki.
Takis.
Takis, I think. Right. And
Yes.
so So I actually said, I'm trying to get my kids to eat Brussels sprouts. And I said, well, those have kind of strong flavors, but you said that your kids like Takis. So crumble those up and make a like little olive oil Takis and put that as a coating and bake them off and try those, get a little bit of a char on them. It was like, oh my God, my kids are eating the heck out of these now. So, I mean, it's just a little creative thinking. Think about what they like to eat, try to pair that up with some produce. And I think that helps build it all. So that's really my approach is you got to start with what they like, try things in different ways, get feedback from them, get them involved. And I think slowly but surely you'll develop a healthy eater.
Yeah, I love it. I love that. Okay, let's talk about your book.
Absolutely. Well, and I will tell you, not only did this book make a difference in my kids' lives, it's amazing. So my book came out at the end of July, and I'm already getting an abundance of pictures from parents, like of the kids reading the book.
Cute.
And it's not just 2 to 8-year-olds who I'm targeting. I'm getting 14-year-olds, 23-year-olds. So everyone's like, oh my God, we just love the characters. I've been very blessed to partner with Brian Dumm, who's an amazing illustrator. He's written a lot of books. Spaghetti is Ready is one of my favorite books, but he's a children's illustrator, and he really got the whole premise of the book. But for those who have not seen the book, you'll see a little foreshadowing at the end because there's a character, Sam, that's in the book. And I want to talk a little bit about Sam, too, if we've got time.
Sure.
But Sam and his dog, Maisie, walking back to their bedroom, actually see little sparkly fairy dust that's coming out of the pantry, which is the foreshadowing to the next book, which is The Boys Who Lived in the Pantry.
Oh.
So that's the next book coming out in, I don't know when, 2025, but that'll be coming out next year.
Nice.
And then the other thing, I don't think, Jill, you and I have talked about, but the series that I have planned after that is The Girls Who Lived in a Refrigerator Go on an Adventure. And the house that the refrigerator is in a very diverse neighborhood. On the right-hand side is an Ecuadorian family. On the left-hand side is a Filipino family. And Maisie the dog is going to take Sam and the 3 magical food fairies to these different homes to learn about different cultures, different ways they celebrate with fruits and vegetables and dairy products.
Wonderful. I love it. I love it. I love having like the next thing in mind too. As an author myself, I already am like, I know what I'm going to be trying to write next. I love it. I think that's so good.
The idea came from this, Jill, is because I also teach a ventures class for dietitians at Benedictine University to help build business acumen. But for anybody who wants to build a business, as you have done, a very successful business, often requires lots of customer feedback to build what's called a minimal viable product. Yeah. So someone said to me, they said, Dave, if you want to, and I said as part of my mission statement, I want to reach kids of all creeds, of all religions, of all races, right? Because we also know specifically Black and brown populations are not eating enough fruits and vegetables, right? And so I want to reach those kids. And someone said, you know what? You should have someone in there that these kids can identify. That's why we have Sam, who's in there, and his mother, who are people of color. And then I started thinking about that. It's like, how do you be inclusive without risking maybe being exclusive? I couldn't include everybody in this first book, but having this series where we're going to visit all these different cultures is a great opportunity to introduce kids to different cultures, why they celebrate the way they celebrate, the different foods. And I don't know, I guess I'm going to get a little corny on you, Jill. I think food is a great uniter, especially in this environment of a great divider. So let's make it happen through food and getting to know a little bit more about each other.
Yeah, I love that, Dave. I think food is the great uniter, right? And it's so much more than just nutrition.
Yes.
It's emotional, it's psychological, it's family connection and cohesiveness. It's so many things. Yeah. So I love all of that. What do you hope families will take away who get this book and who read this book with their children? What do you hope they will take away from this book?
Absolutely. Well, and I'm glad that you brought up the word family, because I'm also very proud to be working with the FMI Foundation, where they have a family meals month and movement. And the reason why it's such a great connection, if you think about the 3 individual food fairies, there's nobody else in that refrigerator. They become a family. They try new foods together. And however you define family, in the literature, it says that eating more family meals will actually help improve academic performance, less absenteeism, less violent behavior. I mean, the list goes on. So that is absolutely one of the things I'm looking for people to get the good news from that, to try things out as a family. But I think the main message is here, don't worry so much about the nutrition. Try to get the kids to eat the right foods by being brave and adventurous.
Love it. Love it. Can you tell our listeners where they can get that book and where they can find you and connect with you, should they want to?
I thought you'd never ask. You can find the book a couple of different places. The softcover, the hardcover, the ebook, and I also have an Audible version where yours truly is narrated. I've hosted my own radio show for 10 years, so I wasn't going to hire someone to narrate this. So if you'd like Uncle Dave to narrate to your kids, like it's a bedtime, get them in their best jammy jams, go ahead and plug in the Audible thing, and then boom, we'll lull them right to sleep. And also you can find the book at thegirlswholivederefrigerator.com.
Awesome. Dave Grotto, such a great thing that you're doing. I love the book. I am so happy you were able to come on the show and share it with all the parents and professionals out there.
Yeah, well, what an honor, Jill. Thank you so much. And please continue to do all your great work in the name of nutrition. You're really helping a lot of people out there. So thank you.
Thank you. That's it for today, folks. I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Dave Grotto. Please consider getting a copy of his book for one of the kids or many of the children in your life, whether you're a parent, a grandparent, a caretaker, an auntie, an uncle. I think it's a great book that can bring adventure and fun into food and nutrition. And we know that children really respond to fun and adventure and enjoyment. So, especially when it comes to food. So, that's it for today. Give that child in your life a loving squeeze today. Bye for now.
Thanks for listening to the Nourished Child Podcast, where the #1 goal is to help you grow a nourished child inside and out.